Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with season 10, episode 11 of our weekly Q&A video slash podcast.
Can we still call it weekly?
Well, close to weekly. Try to be weekly. Attempting to be weekly currently.
Aspirationally
weekly.
Yeah.
Up to as frequently as weekly.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. It's like how you know the dollar store? Sometimes there's like it'll be called like the buck or more store.
Yes.
And I read that and I go, this is not useful information. When I walk into a dollar store, I don't expect things to cost at least $1. It either costs $1 or it costs more than $1. And I'm like, that's not helpful. Because every store, almost like most stores are buck or more stores.
It's like those sales that say up to 20% off.
Yeah. Very, very few stores nowadays have products for less than $1. Maybe there's some places where they have like
Bubblegum.
A
single piece of bubblegum.
Like candy by weight, I'm thinking. Like if you go to a place like a bulk barn, maybe.
Right. Right, single lollipops or something, right?
If you're at like a vintage store, maybe they'll have like a bin of like buttons or something like that.
A garage sale,
like
they might have free stuff.
Yeah, but like what I'm saying is that like almost every store is a buck or more store. So when you say everything here is either $1 or it's more money than $1, it tells me almost no information.
Well, it tells you what they think of their customers.
Yeah.
It's because it's a little bit insulting, right? Like that it's so information. What's the opposite of dense?
Information light.
Yeah, so information light that it's going to be useless, but it gives them the chance to say, "Oh, $1."
Yeah. Okay. It's the branding. You're aligning yourself. I think the problem is that with those stores, right? Inflation means that $1 is worth less and less and less.
Right.
But the sort of psychological anchoring effect of $1, I think, is similar, the same. I guess there was a time in the past, if you go back long enough, where $1 felt like more money too.
Well, there was a time in the past where those stores used to be called 5 and dimes.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So the idea that something would be a nickel or 10 cents was reasonable, and anything more than that would be too much.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things is, I don't know if Americans have something, because we have the toonie, right? So for us, $2 is really strongly sort of psychologically rooted, where I have a sort of...
Because coins.
Yeah. It's coins it's easier to refer to. Is there $2 coins in the US? No, right?
No.
So
do they even have a dollar coin that's in circulation? No. I mean, they have dollar coins. They have dollar coins, but they're not widely circulated. So they still have dollar bills.
Oh, yeah, because they have dollar bills. Yeah. Weird to think about. Yeah, but because jumping to a toonie, a $2 store, I wouldn't hate. But like if you're jumping up to like a $5 store, that doesn't feel like a deal anymore to me. No. I feel like I can get a lot of stuff for $5.
Right.
Although I guess you actually can't. When I try to make a list of things I can get for $5, it's like a coffee if it's cheap.
I'm glad I don't drink coffee.
It's not a long list.
Yeah.
If you make your coffee, it's way cheaper.
But it's still... So I must have said this before. I know I've said it to you. I wish coffee tasted as good as it smells.
Yeah.
Because it smells amazing. And there's that bitterness to it that I just really don't like, that is like awful.
Most coffee, or not, like, good coffee doesn't have to be bitter at all. Different flavors, maybe still flavors that you don't like, but the bitterness is not something. I feel like
not a feature?
I very rarely drink bitter coffee anymore, because I don't like bitterness either. Some people do, like Italian espresso kind of stuff.
But do you have to add something to make it? Do you unbitter it by adding the cream and sugar?
No.
So you drink coffee black?
I drink coffee with some sugar.
Right.
And because I like the taste with the sugar.
Right. But
I don't add milk, and it's not bitter before you add the sugar.
Right.
It's just, it's interesting. Bitter coffee has an association with a lot of people for strong coffee, and a lot of easily accessible coffees that you'd be drinking.
Right.
Because the problem is that you want nice coffee, but you're starting from a place of thinking coffee is bad, so you don't care about it. So you're not seeking out the good stuff.
I don't really want nice coffee.
Yeah. But you would, what you're describing a yearning for is, I wish coffee tasted like it smelled, and you can get coffee that tastes better.
But it never tastes like it smells.
It tastes more similar to how it smells.
Yeah, there's just something, like, to me, it's almost the flip side of tea. Tea can taste pretty good, but there's almost no smell to it.
That's just not true.
For me, it is. My nose is not sensitive. I don't have a very sensitive knows.
I feel like I have the exact same experience with tea, where like you go to a store and you smell the tea and it smells really nice, and then sometimes
before
you
it's made.
it doesn't. No, but even in the cup, you can smell it, and there will be like this sort of sugary, rich, sort of fruity scent with fruit teas, especially.
Tisanes.
And then you sip it, and it's
Tisanes,
not
I learned
that.
a word.
Tisanes
are fruit teas. So teas that are not made from actual tea leaves.
Yeah.
You know, they're fruits and stuff, and they do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Tisane.
Okay. Yeah. So I find that exact same thing where sometimes the tea also, in my opinion, tastes less strongly than it smells.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, I say that, but I don't even really care. I don't need to spend more money on something that I right now don't need to spend money on. I don't know what I'm missing, or I sort of do. I have an idea, and if I'm wrong, that's okay.
That is mostly how I felt about it. But then I've gotten into liking coffee now, and it's interesting because it's almost less of how good it is in a vacuum. Like if you ask me, in most cases, would I rather have like a fruit juice or like a coffee?
Right.
If it's not for the caffeine, I think I like the taste of like a fruit juice better. But it's when you learn,
it's functional.
Yeah, but when you learn about coffee, it's also interesting. It's kind of fun. Right. And I like to be able to have something with a little less sugar that maybe makes me feel a little awakened. So, you know, you don't always want to drink fruit juices. Like how sometimes you want just water.
Yeah.
And you can sort of get a feel for like what different like municipalities of water taste
like. Right. So along those lines, have I told you the story before? There's a show called Just Shoot Me.
Yeah.
And who was in it? Was it David Spade? And the dad from Veronica Mars. And Lausanne Giacomo.
So this is a
drama? It's a sitcom.
Okay.
So what was funny was there's this male guy who got a raise. He didn't even want... I'm going to remember it wrong because I haven't seen this in like more than 10, 20 years. He got a raise. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know what to do with the money. So his friends at the newsroom, or maybe it's not news, I can't remember, doesn't matter, convinced him. So just, you know, spend it on something that you'll enjoy more. So he used to eat rice. Yeah. They had him try risotto, which is basically rice, but it's Italian. And a lot of times when you use the fancy Italian name...
You have told me this
before. So you make it fancier, and then he loved it.
Risotto isn't just rice, though.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but risotto is rice.
It's a preparation style.
It is a preparation style.
It's a dish. It's not like an ingredient.
It's
like you say sushi. And sushi is just rice and fish.
Yes. But it's not like a single ingredient. Like you can have risotto with just rice.
No.
Yeah, you can.
I don't think you can.
I think risotto is rice. Like it's Italian for rice.
No, I think risotto
Can you look it up? I don't
rice,
have a phone to
I
look
think
it up.
Risotto is rice that is prepared in like a broth. And it absorbs the broth. And that's like why.
All right, anyways. So he's enjoying this and he's really loving it. And then he loses his money.
Risotto is an Italian rice dish cooked with broth until it reaches a creamy consistency. So it is
okay.
a specific genre of dish.
It's just, all right. So so when he loses his raise, or he gets a salary cut or something, he's ruined. His life is ruined now because he can no longer enjoy regular rice.
Yeah. He's got to have his risotto.
He's got to have risotto. So I'm that guy. I'm the mailroom guy. Yeah. I'm on my rice. I'm happy with it. I know the dangers of trying risotto now, and I don't need that.
Yeah. So there's also the similar corner gas bit, and that's why I remember you telling me about it.
When it came up from corner gas,
Just Shoot Me didn't ring any bells, but this part of it I was like, oh yes, and then I said this. So I remember the conversation we had.
Yeah.
Talking about shows, the spin-off to The Boys is out now.
Oh,
it just showed up.
University V?
Generation V, I think it's called.
Okay.
So we got to give that a try.
Yes, for
it's
sure.
interesting. I'm always interested when they do spin-offs while the OG shows are going. And I know that what it probably is you have like a separate like
creative team.
Right? It's a different cast and a different creative team. So it lets you sort of do two shows cashing in on the IP at the same time.
And I think the success is more likely when they've got source material to work with.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times you saw this in Game of Thrones, right? When they had good source material to work with, the storytelling was tight. You had deviations from the plot, but intentional deviations, right? Like they're considered deviations.
You're starting with something that people already liked, and then you are adapting it for the medium and making some different choices, but the bones of it are already there, and the bones of it are already sort of tested.
Right. So example I like to give is because The Boys is based on a comic book, right?
Yeah, but apparently not as good a comic book nearly.
Oh no, it's really good.
I've heard that The Boys does not hold up as well.
I think a lot of it will be because if it was good to start, and then you have other talented creative people look at it, they can do things differently than they considered when they started at the beginning. Because what you're talking with the source material, right? Like a lot of times you can't start off knowing exactly where you're going to end up and being as good as you are towards the end when you've had more practice.
Yeah, but have you read the original?
No.
Because what I've heard about The Boys is that the original is a lot more gross out and shock value. It feels a lot more sort of excessive without as clear a purpose. It is of its time, so part of its politics is a lot more nihilistic, even though like the show is like pretty nihilistic. And so I've heard for what it is that the show actually manages to make a much more like a piece of media that has more interesting things to say and feels less excessive in sort of its like darker themes.
Let me just say, as somebody who's come from comic books, so I haven't read The Boys specifically, but I also recognize the kind of storytelling that happens.
Yeah.
And with comic books, unless you've got somebody who does really realistic painted art, what happens is people, it takes more to shock somebody reading a comic, which are, fictional depictions, than it is when you're watching real people acting out the parts, so that you can be more subtle and still achieve the same effect. So I think it'll depend on where you're coming from, because comics have a long history of violence. Yeah. In order to give you that sense of, oh my God, when you're reading it, you have to crank it up a little bit. So I saw those criticisms, and that's, even though I haven't read it, that's my consideration, that I wonder how many of those critics actually have a lot of experience reading comic books. The
reason why I say that is because partially where I get that opinion from is from my friend who I know reads a decent amount of comics, Alex. Yeah, she had like read it and said like the show is actually like better and like handles it better. And so I with broad critics I don't know as much, but with her I know that she does a decent amount of comic reading. So I'm more willing to sort of take her criticism as like relatively well informed.
And I think, who was the writer for that? Was it
the
Mark
same guy
Miller?
Who did Preacher.
Oh, Garth Ennis.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then never mind.
I think maybe also Invincible. Did Garth Ennis?
No.
That was
it was Walking Dead did Invincible. Kirkman did Invincible. What was I going to say? Oh, but the other point I was going to make, there's a few writers who, you can see that because there's shows that are not tied in by anything except for the fact that the original source was this writer. So, have you seen Stumptown?
No, I have not.
Excellent show. That was Greg Rucka. Have you seen Old Guard on Netflix?
No.
Oh, that you know what it is, right? Charlize Theron.
Maybe not.
Okay. Also Greg Rucka. And more recently, maybe not as strong, was Heart of Stone. Also Greg Rucka. I would easily recommend all of them. I think Heart of Stone is the weakest of the three, but they're all really good. A lot of fun to watch. Stumptown was sort of, it's the kind of show that's been done before, but when it's done really well, is really enjoyable. Great soundtrack too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I had one more thing that I wanted to mention, which was weird and interesting, and maybe not that many people care about it. I don't know if I've talked about the specific university I've gone to. I'm not going to say its name, but this information might allow somebody who's really motivated to look it up and figure it out. It doesn't really matter. But my university has been used for TV and movies a handful of times.
Right.
And without saying the specific ones, there's like names in terms of like directors and actors, and it was very funny because I recently got an ad for a movie, and I instantly recognized both the main actor and the location. I said, "Oh my god, that's my university. That's where I used to like." There's like a Starbucks right there. That's like where I used to like hang out and like meet my friends. And it's funny for two reasons. One reason it's funny is because it's weird to get like an ad for like a place that you recognize instantly. Right. And the second reason it's very weird is because the sets that it's always used for is like really like government institution where they do unethical testing or like prison or like whatever. It's a very like brutalist architecture. And
That's
it looks,
brutalist.
Yeah.
That was the word. Okay, yeah, okay.
So it's when things look dour and depressing and maybe a little unsettling, like a place. And sometimes it's used as like a school or something similar, but it's like some sort of building that has a lot of people pass through that nobody really enjoys their time in.
Right.
It's often
unwelcoming.
Yeah. And so it's really funny to see the place that I spent, you know, some of my formative educational years being used for this. Like, oh yeah, this is like it's like the oldest house in like the video game Control. It's like brutalist architecture. It's like a place where like a scientist drops their papers and then like their mean boss like kicks them away from them, or there's like a tense interaction with like people in lab coats. It doesn't look like a place for like 20 somethings to like smoke weed or whatever.
So what's ironic is the school I went to
in
the same city has also been on a lot of movie and TV sets, and it's used to stand in for Ivy League schools. Yeah.
And what's funny is that it's basically the same school.
It's basically the same school, right.
It's very entertaining. There's always a weird thing. There's in Captain Disillusion's most recent YouTube video, there was like he referenced a TikTok. And the TikTok was like filmed outside of the place that I lived this summer, and I like knew the street. And so when you're just like going about your day and in a place that you don't expect it, you see like a reminder of like home or like what has been like a home turf for you. It's always a little surprising and shocking.
Right, to watch it through a different lens.
Yeah, where I go, oh, that's weird. I know that. Yeah, I know that. Yeah. Anyways, we'll get into the questions maybe. Sure. First one comes from Hoshi127. And they say, hey, in reply to the beginning of the Q&A about the viewer consistency, I tend to only watch your videos when I'm either at work or playing Injustice at home. Because of that, I also tend to watch your videos in spurts back to back. Maybe the weeks are inconsistent because different rewards in the game aren't worth grinding. Could the viewership be somewhat tied to that week's in-game content at all?
And I started answering. I should have pulled the responses. Yeah. But it's an interesting thing because, I mean, we've been doing it long enough that we've noticed some patterns. Yeah. There's a big bump in the pre-Christmas, pre-holiday season, pre-gift giving season in ad revenue. Yeah. Totally independent of what we do. And I guess...
Which makes sense for a couple of reasons.
Sure. And there's been a few years now where there isn't any new content. So it's not like people are chomping at the bit to find out what's going on any given week or want to know more about one specific character a lot more than any other week.
Yeah, it's true. I think the other thing is that for some people are probably coming for the discussion of like how to use a character, right?
Right.
Some people are coming for the discussion of just knowing what's there without needing to sort of check it themselves.
Right.
Maybe. And so for people, I guess that some weeks, if there's a character that seems like they might be good, but it's not clear how to use them, or that people see sort of like potential in and want to understand deeper, that might drive more traffic. But it is one of those things where it feels arbitrary enough that like, we definitely haven't crunched the data, and it might be hard or impossible for like our level of sort of data crunching ability to meaningfully sort of get signal from the noise of like how many views a video gets. So it's possible, but it's hard for me to sort of tell by looking at it.
But since we had our last update, which was more than 3 years ago, and never mind the update, like there's been a consistent pattern of the challenge characters for more than for 3.5 years, and yet they stopped before that.
Yeah.
So consistently, the summer is probably the worst for ad revenue. Consistently.
Yeah, that's true.
And maybe it picks up a little bit towards the fall. It peaks in over the Christmas holiday season, and then it slowly declines again, and sometimes more quickly declines.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about the summer has been, we talked about this, right? How I was just looking at some of the numbers.
Yeah.
That it reached. So let's talk Turkey here, right? How much ad revenue? The peak 28-day rolling sort of average, or not average, total. The peak one, it actually hit $49 for a full month.
Wow.
And it's dropped down.
That's the big bucks right there.
It is. And then it's dropped down below 30 again.
Yeah.
Below 30 before. Excuse me. And then it peaked again. Sorry, and then peaked in the summer, and then it's back down again. So it's interesting because normally that doesn't happen not only during the summer, but it also doesn't happen when we have fewer videos.
Yeah. It's funny because the question was about viewership, and I think sometimes it's hard to know what to do with viewership, so we kind of jump to ad revenue because it feels like it's more concrete. But yeah, so that's the other weird thing is that, like, viewership, to me, like, a view is hard to know the value of just because a view is 30 seconds. And so, like, on a half an hour video, if somebody watches it for 30 seconds, I don't really, like, emotionally, that doesn't feel like a view to me. Even though, like, YouTube categorizes it as one. And so, like, if you watch, like, 10 minutes of this or 20 minutes, I'm like, yeah, okay, you watched, like, a chunk of that video. But if you, like, watch it for, like, a minute and then go, I don't like this, in my opinion, that person wouldn't say, like, I, like, watched that video. They would say, yeah, I thought about watching it and I didn't. So sometimes it's hard to know how to feel about views, and it's easier to look at, like, other metrics.
So So in my mind, views are more arbitrary. They're more they fluctuate more easily, and they're also more easily manipulable.
Yeah, it's nice when the numbers get big, but the things that I have always cared most about, I think, really practically are, like, comments and like meaningful, like, engaging interactions.
Right.
And then that also, like, extends to, I guess, people who, like, support us on Patreon, because that's kind of like the one level up of, like, an interaction where they're, like, fundamentally, like, sort of committing something to us, right?
Which Hoshi 127 does.
Yeah. So that feels like the stuff that, like, matters to me. So, like, I don't really care about viewerships. I care about, like, the kinds of interactions that we have with, like, Hoshi 127, for example.
Right.
Feel like a real thing to me, because I think that's one of the things is that, like, views and those metrics are, like, numbers that, like, stimulate, like, they're like a little dopamine hit, but they're not, it's really hard to convert that to any sense of, like real world impact, like something. And I feel like seeing a comment, seeing something written by another person or whatever, like, that's one person who did this one thing. In my head, I know what that looks like, and I don't know what 1,000 views looks like. It doesn't mean anything to me.
Right.
One of the interesting things that I saw, there was a creator who was, and I wish I could reference it, but I have no clue who it is, who converted their total engagement time into, like, a total number of years, and they measure that up against their own, like, age and, like, lifespan. And I thought that was an interesting way of doing it, because, you know, watch time, like, X number of minutes doesn't mean anything to me. But when I convert it, and I converted ours, and I realized that it was also longer than I've been alive.
Really?
Yeah. Our total number of watch minutes. And so that feels like a really sort of meaningful thing. But if I said, like, I don't remember how many minutes it was, let's say, like, 100,000, because I can't in my head sort of do the order of magnitude all the way down to, like, years. Right. But, you know, 100,000 watch minutes, I'm like, I don't know what that means, but it's, like, longer than I've been alive. People have spent more time listening to or watching these videos than I have spent on this planet. That's cool. That's interesting.
Right.
And but even that feels, like, less human or less social, because that's, like, me comparing it to myself. I'm, like, using myself as, like, a yardstick. I don't feel the other people in that metric. I just see myself. Right. And in those, like, comments or other interactions, I can actually sort of see other people in what feels like a more kind of comprehensible way. And so that's always the stuff that I care more about. And then it's easy to look at sort of in terms of arbitrary numbers. Obviously, the ad revenue is the easiest to look at, because that's a number of dollars in my pocket, right? And that's still in the same way that, like, watch minutes is kind of self-reflective. It's still thinking about, like, yeah, you know, $40, that's like this meal or this game or this, you know,
I guess to me the difference when you look
tank of gas.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's true. Gas is getting expensive.
Yeah.
But the difference to me between the raw number of views and the ad revenue is that you've got a gatekeeper, YouTube and Google, who've decided that certain views have more value because, for whatever reason, it happens to be a video with more engagement, or they spent more time watching it, and whatever. So they've looked at it and said, so these views have more value than just the number of people. So they're basically, to me, they're sort of weeding out the number of people that are watching for 20, 30 seconds or whatever.
It's true, because if you watch for the whole thing, you get, like, the multiple ads, if there are multiple ads.
Right.
But then some people, I guess, I want to know, just for my own interest, what is the most valuable single ad that can get served to somebody by category for like skippable, like 30 seconds, skippable, like whatever, banner, all that stuff? Because I know that some of it is their like user tracking, and I'm sure there's somebody who's like clicking on ads for like watches and buying them on a regular basis and stuff like that, where people really want to put something in front of that person.
Spider's George, yeah. Spider's George. So there's one person whose view is so much more valuable than everybody else's that he's what lifts up the average value of a view.
Yeah, every time he sees an ad for something, he clicks on it and he buys it. So they're paying $20 just to show it to that one guy. Yeah, once.
So it's YouTube's George.
It's like how I did the MCAT, and then for like all of my YouTube ads were like St. James School of Medicine wants you, because they knew one thing about me, which is that I might be going to med school. And they said, if we can convince this person to sign up for med school, all we need is one ad to go through. And so clearly nobody else wanted to put anything in front of my eyeball as bad as like St. James School of Medicine wanted to put St. James School of Medicine in front of my eyeball, and they really, really, really wanted me to know about it. And so they were paying more than anybody else for any of my ads, which just made me really, really annoyed by them. And it sort of ruined. It's not that I like watching ads. It's that normally you at least get variety.
Yeah.
And seeing the same thing over and over again, it's like when like a kid has like a favorite song or like show, and that's like all they want to like watch or listen to, where it just eventually just wears you down. Where I was seeing the same smiling faces talking about like the value of like diversity and hands-on experience in the community, and I was like, I hate all of you.
But see, I think that's not a great example, because when you're a kid, you actually are happy to watch it over and over again without getting worn down.
Yeah, I'm saying so it's like the adult.
Yeah, so I gotta tell you, when you were little, one of your favorite movies was the live version of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
And there's so many Disney movies that we watched over and over that you really get an appreciation of a well-crafted movie that has the rewatch appeal, but also a broad kind of appeal, so that you would enjoy it, but we would not be tearing out our hair to watch it again.
Yeah. No, it's some movies are like that, and kids really get into. There was I forget what this situation was, but I was like looking after, like hanging out with like some family friends, like 3.5-year-old or 4-year-old, and she was super quiet, and didn't talk much, whatever. It was just kind of playing, doing her own thing. It was fine, right? As a kid, and they don't know me that well, so I don't expect them to be super warm. But then we were like, oh, we can put on a movie or whatever, and she wanted to watch Frozen, and then the second Frozen started playing, she like locked in, like did not look away from the screen, and just like quietly under her breath, like with the right tone, pacing, and everything, was like singing along to all the songs, doing like the conversational interludes or whatever. She had it memorized like front to back, like second to second, and it was like surprising, because she didn't become more outgoing, right? Because it's almost a solitary experience. I don't think she would have noticed if people left the room at that point. She was so dialed in, but she was, talkative. She was talking and singing and hitting the notes pretty well too for a kid. So, I think when you're that age, it's probably hard for you to hit the notes even if you know them. So for the fact that she was hitting most of them meant that she really needed to know. And stuff like that always surprises me. Kids' brains are like a sponge, and they use it on some real interesting stuff.
I thought you were going to go a different direction, like something a little bit more judgmental.
They've got so much neuroplasticity. They're sucking up so much information from the world around them. And some kids use it to learn
4 different languages.
Yeah, some kids use it to become multilingual, and some kids use it to have a second by second breakdown of exactly what happens in the movie Frozen front to back. Yeah. I gotta tell you, there's some. I hear a story like that, and it makes me think of how you can develop skills that nobody appreciates until the perfect confluence of events. So I remember a story when Kevin Smith, the movie guy, was tapped to write Green Arrow, the comic book. Yeah. He needed some help. So he's a comic book fan, but he wasn't like an expert on Green Arrow.
So I remember hearing the story about a guy that he consulted that was really helpful to him, who knew every single Green Arrow thing. And up until that moment when Kevin Smith was writing the comic book, his font of knowledge had really limited utility.
Yeah.
It wasn't very useful until that one moment, and then he got his moment in the sun. But
it's a real payoff.
But the whole, I guess the point is that it's like a lot of those other, you remember not Freakonomics, was it Freakonomics? No, it was Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah,
it was
the
the thing
10,000
about 10,000
hours to be an expert.
Right. So a lot of the times you have success, not because you identify a need and then you put in 10,000 hours. It's because you put in 10,000 hours in something that's probably not going to be useful. And then the perfect opportunity arises that you're the only person, or you're one of the handful of people that can take advantage of that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And then you do.
Yeah. I always respect people really reaching the top of their craft with something, especially when it's something sort of strange that you just is clearly driven by passion. And because I see those people, and the thought, I don't know why this is a thought, but the thing that I always think is that person is better at that thing than most people ever get at anything.
Right.
Most people never reach the level of skill at anything in their life that person has reached in that. And that's kind of cool and singular, which is just that, like, you know, I think that's the kind of thing about like jack of all trades or like master of one, where it's cool and unusual to see somebody just get really ridiculously proficient at like one specific thing.
Right.
And there's something a little compelling about it. Right. And I think it shows you need clear like passion and dedication.
Right.
And it's almost more appealing to me when it doesn't make any sense. You know, when I go, I don't know why this is I don't know how you could have possibly gotten yourself to care this much about it.
But then the joy feels more pure.
Yeah. Well,
it's like something like distilled into that's independent of, well, it doesn't matter that it's popular to other people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that it makes you money. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's a joy.
It doesn't confer like value or status. You're
right.
not doing it for, if somebody's like, I'm the best at business, right? I'm the best at, you know, doing this really cool thing. Right. I'm like, is this for you because you like this thing a lot, or is it because you like looking cool? Right?
Or you like money.
You like money. You like power. You know, I'm the best. And then like the least appealing version is like, I'm the best at like picking up women. And I'm like, why? Like that's
right.
That's not a skill that anybody needs.
And separate from that is just that a lot of the stuff that they do is just really gross.
Yeah. But it's just like such a clear like social capital thing. But if somebody's like, I am the best at like basket weaving for like this like traditional pattern or whatever. I'm like, that's cool. Because nobody needs that many baskets. You got good at that because you loved it.
Right. And the guy who knew so much about Green Arrow.
Yeah.
That this was the singular expert that if you needed Green Arrow information, you would get it from him.
Yeah. Because even something like knitting, you know, you can learn that. That can be a social activity. You can learn it from your context. It's funny when it's so weird that it's like you picked this road entirely by yourself. Yeah. You found this, and there wasn't even anybody to really help you the same way. Yeah. So I find those stories compelling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Anyways, do you want to do?
I think we're out of time.
We can do one little thing quick, just because
really
I don't think you'd have too much to say about it. Cameron, 1072. Friend of the show, says, love how you incorporated Injustice 2 Superman into the weekly recap without it feeling out of place.
Thank you. That was nice. Made the effort, but we've got the next character that's missing from the cycle that we skipped when we were doing it is Batman Ninja Lord Joker, and who happens to be, I think, the challenge character for this week.
Yeah.
So then we'll be down to just two more. The opportunity for Injustice 2 Superman really was, again, a confluence of events. Mm-hmm. We had a character, Red Lantern Hal Jordan, who is almost impossible to make your main damage dealer in multiplayer because of his passive, and he's got a limited pool of health. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost impossible to output enough damage to knock out all three opponents consistently without before you knock yourself out. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of funny. To me, it's always funny when I do a special and he knocks himself out. I have to laugh a little bit each time that happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there we go. Now we've talked at least a little bit about Injustice. So I think we can end it without feeling too bad. So to finish up this week, I'd like to give a shout out to Eliza Retro Camera Caton. I don't know if she's at the top of her craft with it, but I know that she knows a lot more about it and is like a hobbyist in it in a way that makes her much more knowledgeable than me and the average person about like retro, like film and like instant cameras. And I've learned some interesting stuff from her about that. So that's her
neat
interest.
When I was going through school and we had art, I took photography. We had our own darkroom.
Those are
so
cool.
We could develop our own negatives, film, and develop our own pictures, like photos out of them.
That's fun. That's cool.
It was interesting. It was very stinky. The chemicals, like the fixer and the developer,
that makes sense.
Were a little nasty.
Yeah. Are the fumes bad for you in the dark room? Can't be great.
I don't know. I don't know that we ever. I don't. You know, I was at an age where the question just never occurred to me, and then I stopped doing it. So I never thought to go back to look at it.
You're like, I don't know. The fumes are probably okay for you. I never remembered being in the dark room after I left. So,
but the neat thing was because I mean, this was an age. I mean, I'm not that old, so this was an age where color film was much more prevalent.
Yeah.
But we used black and white because black and white film and paper, photographic paper, were less sensitive to light. So you could work in with red light and not have to worry about it spoiling your photos. Yeah.
Kind of related, kind of unrelated. We're rambling a little bit, but we have a minute. I recently was in doing an evening drive, and it always trips me up that in low light conditions you start seeing in black and white because you have so many more rods than cones. So when you get a lot of light, you can see color, but when you get a little bit of light, you don't lose resolution, but you lose color vision first.
Right.
And that's always such a weird thing to me to say there's you can set up like a natural lighting condition such that basically you're seeing in black and white. It always just when I really notice it always trips me out a little bit. Anyways,
okay.
We'd also like to give a huge thank you to all of our lovely supporters on Patreon.
That would be Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, and Hoshi127 who are supporting us on the credited level, and the other list of people whose names you see on the screen who have been kind and generous enough to have supported us at some point during this pandemic come epidemic.
Yeah. So there we go. Thank you so much for your support. And thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.